Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Ba Ghost Story YouTube channel. I hope everyone has an exciting ghost story listening session. Thank you all very much. And now let's get to the wonderful stories for Na. The first story is related to when she was in 3rd grade. At that time, she had an aunt who had passed away, but she didn't really know her aunt well. She was a relative who was about 20 years older than her. When that aunt passed away, she still didn't know what her face looked like because at that time, the aunt was still a virgin and seemingly didn't have a husband. That night was like any other night. Before her mother went to sleep with her father, she went outside in front of the house to sleep. In front of her living room, there were 2 parallel beds. One side was where her brother slept, and the other side was where she slept. Her mom had to lull her to sleep before she went into sleep with her dad. After she fell asleep, her mom began to go into the bedroom with her dad, leaving her and her brother sleeping outside under a mosquito net. After a while of sleeping, she suddenly woke up, and when she looked toward the room door, she saw a figure stand in front of that door. The door was very high, and her house's ceiling was also quite high, around 6 meters tall. The figure was very dark. It seemed shadowy, but it was almost touching the ceiling. At that moment, she didn't realize what was going on, but when she saw that figure backing away, she got really scared because it didn't look like her mother. So she cried out loud. Then she saw that figure slowly shrink into the shape of a dragonfly, flying in circles around her room. When she heard her cry too loudly, her mother came out of the room, stood by her bed, and asked if she was okay. She continued to cry a lot, so her mother pulled the mosquito net aside. When she looked at her mother's belly, she noticed that the dragonfly looked just like a dragonfly, but it didn't seem like a real dragonfly. When her mother moved the net, the figure was already outside before her mother had come in, and she saw that it had flown into the mosquito net. Her family was Catholic, so when her mom came out and saw her like that, she thought it was very strange. Why was her child seeing something that seemed to fly around, resembling a human form? So the whole family gathered in front to read the rosary. After finishing the reading, they still didn't see anything but felt uneasy. They didn't know what was happening in their house, so at that moment, her family decided they would no longer sleep in their house and move to their grandmother's house instead, which was about 2 kilometers away. It was getting close to 11:30 p.m. when they left, and it took quite a while to arrive at their grandmother's house. There, she slept almost until dawn. At that time, she was startled awake and called for her dad and mom to wake up, preparing to go to the market because her parents had to get up early to sell. She told them that when she slept over at her grandmother's house, she didn't see that figure all night anymore. However, once her parents woke up to prepare to go to the market, she saw that figure flying around in her grandmother's house again, just flying in circles around where she was sleeping. When she saw it flying around, she got scared and cried out loud, and then she noticed that it landed on her father's face. So, in a panic, she swatted it away, and when she hit it, she didn't see it anymore. The next day, her family asked the priest what that flying thing was, and the priest said it was a rose that her aunt came to visit her with. Additionally, she had frequent headaches, and she didn't know until she visited the priest that she had that condition. The priest said every time she had a headache, her aunt came to visit her, just to see her, and that she wouldn't harm her at all. That story, although it happened a long time ago, even until now, whenever she concentrates on the darkness, she can still see a figure flying around. However, it still resembles a human, but like a tiny human. She can clearly see that it wears a purple outfit with black stripes and keeps flying around in the dark. And that is the first very short story from when she was in the 3rd grade. The second story is also quite short and is about a secondhand motorbike. This story happened in 2019 when she met a girlfriend who lived 32 kilometers away from her. At that time, they dated quite normally. By then, she was already in the 12th grade, and her family bought her an old Air Blade motorcycle, 110 cubic centimeters blue, which belonged to a friend of her uncle. This story happened during the times when they went out for drinks because even though they were dating, they respected each other and only rode out for water. Since they had to go to school during the day, they would only go out for drinks or coffee from about 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and would come back. They didn't dare return around 10 or 11 p.m. as the road was very long, taking about an hour or more. The route from her girlfriend's house to hers had to cross a field that was about 8 kilometers long, going over the Tramchim National Park area. At that time, she also felt uneasy. Even though it's only around 8 or 9 p.m., running fast in that stretch is like it's already around 10 p.m., and it's not very useful because when you run too fast, you don't even care about what's around you, like the cars that are driving by. Sometimes you don't even notice how many houses are along that road. But the truth is that when you run to the 8-kilometer area, you'll find it's completely devoid of any cars or houses nearby. Furthermore, neither of your cars has rearview mirrors attached because, first, in your countryside, you don't want to install them, and the police don't bother checking. So it's very comfortable and not worrying about being robbed. Besides, you find installing rearview mirrors too cumbersome, so you don't install them. As a result, whenever you're driving and want to see if there's anyone behind you, you just turn your head around instead of checking the mirror since you don't have one. I remember one time, he was driving fast in that empty stretch when, out of habit, I turned my head back to see if there was a car behind. I looked back and saw a girl sitting in the back of my car. I couldn't see her face, but she was wearing a gown that looked just like a bride's. But when I looked down at her knees, I noticed that the dress was not very long, just slightly past her knees, and it was white. At that moment, when I turned my head back, I wanted to die from fear. However, at that point, while I was driving, I thought, what do I do now? Should I just jump out of the car and run? But then I would die for sure, so I tried to calm myself down and remembered what my elders often advised. Every time you encounter a ghost or something unpleasant, say something like no fate, no debt, no connection, no grudge. I cannot help with these pains. After saying that, just as I expected the girl to hear me, I saw 2 fingers from behind me extending out toward my left side. Those 2 fingers wrapped around my left wrist while my left hand was holding the steering wheel, and those fingers were pale, just like the fingers of a drowned corpse being dragged up from underwater. It was precisely on that stretch of road, and during those hours that after going out to drink water together, I continued to see occurrences like that. Once, while driving, I saw a child standing by the roadside wearing a green football uniform and a brown cap. I drove past quickly, and he didn't scare me at all. I just noticed him standing there. The next time, while driving, even though I couldn't see anything, all of a sudden at that stretch of road, I caught a whiff of a smell like the oil that old people often use, like Trong Sun oil or Fat Lin oil that people apply. It's like you walk through and leave behind a strong scent of that oil. Even though I smelled that at that moment on that road, there wasn't a soul in sight until after the several occurrences, I went home and told my grandmother about these stories. The next morning, my grandmother asked a master to come look into these matters related to what I told him. The following day, the master came all the way to my house because my grandmother had asked about why after buying this motorcycle, I ran into all those things. After asking about the story, the master called me over and asked if I bought this motorcycle as the third owner. I confirmed that yes, that's right. I bought that used motorcycle from my uncle's friend, and as far as I knew, the first inspection of that motorcycle was in 2016. Then the first owner sold it to my uncle's friend, and he sold it to me for a very cheap price of just over $10 million. At that time, a motorcycle like that was worth around $13 to $14 million. Then the master told the main content, saying that the first owner of that motorcycle had hit and killed 4 people, 1 child, 1 old woman, and 2 spouses. After hearing that, I felt like cursing everything. I asked why the first time I saw a woman in a gown like a bride could have been the wife of one of the couples hit by this motorcycle. The second was the child in the green football uniform with a brown cap, alongside the smell of the oil on that road. The master advised me to sell the motorcycle and not to use it anymore, and definitely not to sell it to someone I knew. If I sell it, I should sell it to a shop or to someone else, not to a friend or relative of mine, because they would see that I was constantly haunted. Hearing what the master said, I was already scared, so I decided to follow his advice. The next day, I took that motorcycle to a used motorcycle shop to sell it. With this story, I sincerely want to convey to us that when we have money, we should buy good, new motorcycles with known origins. If we don't have enough economic means, We can buy a cheap but relatively new motorcycle, which is better. Because if we cheap out and buy motorcycles of unknown origin that might have been involved in accidents, there could be unpredictable consequences. This concludes the third part of your story. It's a very engaging and thrilling story, which can be said to have started from when you had nothing until you became your own boss at a very young age. At that time, you wanted to go broke just because of a hasty statement that affected your grandfather. Now, let's begin the story. The ghost story of Miss Hai starting her career as a worker there is still a bit faded since it's only the beginning of the time. All three of them struggled a lot. They had no money for food, and their families sent them money, but it wasn't enough. Moreover, they were going to a place where they didn't know anything at all. Additionally, at that time, one of them was underage. They were only 3 months away from turning 18 years old, making it very difficult to find a job because they were not of age yet. When they all went to apply for jobs together, the other two friends were Tai and Tan. However, only you and Tan went up first, while Tai would come later because he was still working as a server at a coffee shop back home. After 3 days and long, Tan managed to find a job, and after securing a job, they invited Tai to come up. At that time, all three of them were living at the house of Tana's older brother and sister because they hadn't found a lodging yet. After staying with the couple for a few days, the three of them started looking for a place to stay, but kept failing. They probably also asked the couple to help look for a room. They eventually helped find a room for the three of them, which was about 2 kilometers away from the brother and sister's house. Then they decided to stay in that room. On the first day, only you and Tan moved in because Tai was on the opposite schedule with his 2 friends. You and Tan entered the lodging to see the first scene that struck your eyes. That scene was a very strange and long altar that was set right at the spot on the stairs, facing the entrance door. Just imagine, when you looked up at that altar, you felt overwhelmed and thought, "Oh my God, why would a rented room have this altar? Whose altar is it? Why didn't the previous owner take this altar with them? Why is it left here?" It feels creepy. Remembering that moment, you also felt quite annoyed and said to Tan, "Why is this altar here? Can we move it? I see there's no one worshipped here anyway. We are Catholics, so why do we have this?" After hearing you say that, Tan agreed about the altar. Because you looked at the altar and didn't see anyone who was worshipped, you only saw 1 incense stick and 3 small jars of alcohol. At that moment, you weren't even sure if the altar was dedicated to the dead or to Buddha or maybe to the god of wealth or land. You were not knowledgeable about that. After everything was settled, Tai came back from work, and the three of you had a meal together as usual. You didn't know why the next day Tai fell ill, but it was really bad. You and Tan took Tai to the hospital, knowing where to buy medicine. You had to take the bike to buy medicine for Tai, and also to get food for the three of you for the coming days. However, we didn't understand what was wrong with Tai. 7 days later, he still hadn't recovered. So, the next day, you and Tan went to work as usual, while Tai had to stay at home to rest and recover. On that day, when you and Tan returned home, it was already around 3 a.m. You got home and hurriedly went to sleep early to wake up the next morning to go to the bus station to pick up food from your mother that she sent from home because you had run out of money for food. That day, being tired anyway, you fell asleep deeply until 10:30 a.m. It felt like waking up but still being sleepy when you suddenly saw a girl standing at your feet. This girl was the same girl from the altar you saw. She looked to be about 22 years old, and her hair covered her face, leaving only her nose visible, and you could see her mouth smiling widely. You were startled and rubbed your eyes quickly, only to not see her anymore. After that, you shared this story with Tana's sister, and she asked, "Did you guys move into that room without offering anything to the person there?" You replied, "We haven't offered anything yet." So she told you all to go and buy offerings for the person. The next day, after you prepared the offerings, Tai got better and continued working until one day, Tai was chosen by the company to go to work in Dong Nai. That day, you and Tan stayed home. You both came back very early, but you didn't understand why you felt anxious that day, wanted to go back home immediately, even though you couldn't figure out why. However, remembering how you had to put your bike up when Tai was sick to buy medicine and food for the three of you You were worried about not being able to return home without your bike. So you gave up the thought of going home, fearing what your parents would say if they found out. One day, you lay resting in the room when Tana's brother-in-law came over to invite the two of you to his house for a drink. However, you didn't want to go. You just wanted to stay home alone. You told Tan, if you want to go, then go alone. I'm going to stay home. After some time, Tan decided to go. Eventually, Tana's brother-in-law continued to insist you go too, and you thought it was too weird. So you felt compelled to follow him. The ghost story of Miss Hai must go over there. Then the siblings prepare things and drink together. They were drinking like that until a while later, around 9 p.m. Your youngest sister from the countryside called to inform you that your grandmother and your maternal grandmother are being hospitalized at the same time. At that moment, hearing such news made you really want to go back, so you invited Tan. Let's go back together. However, Tan's older siblings didn't want the two of them to go at this hour because it was already too late and it was dangerous to go back. They suggested to stay the night and return the next morning. But then, the two of them pretended and said, yes, we'll go home first, and tomorrow morning we'll go back to the countryside. However, in reality, you had already snuck out with Tan. You said, now let's run outside to get gas, and then we'll go back to the countryside. While the two of them were going out to get gas and preparing to depart, Tan suddenly remembered he forgot something in the room, so they turned back. At this moment, you prayed, hoping that you would travel safely. Then, both of you started departing from Dukhoa. Wanted to go back to the countryside, but Tan's car was also very broken down, so on the 130 kilometers road from Dukhoa to the countryside, his car broke down 3 times. Each time it broke down, the two of them stopped to find ways to fix it late at night. After 3 repairs, they managed to run a little before it broke down again. At that point, you started to feel annoyed and recalled the strange things in your room. You wondered who could be causing trouble, and you thought it must be the spirits in your rental room causing it. So, while you were fixing the car, you stood up and said, is there a way to go home? Just say something, otherwise I'll burn this car down. After saying that, you continued to repair, and eventually, the car started running again without any more issues until July 31st, 2019. On that day, your grandmother was transferred to the Shuyana Hospital in Ho Chi Minh City. At that time, your father also went along to take care of your grandmother. On the journey from the countryside to the Shuyana Hospital, your father planned to stop by your rental room to check on you and see how you were doing. That day, your father also visited your room, and you became worried he would discover that your motorcycle had been pawned on the day Tai got sick. So you lied to your father, saying that Tan's motorcycle was at your older sister's house. That day, Tan also went to your sister's house to hang out. However, on that same day, you had just broken up with your girlfriend, making you feel off. So you told Tan, Dad hasn't come back yet. Stay over there. Don't come back tonight. Just stay over there. You said that because you wanted to be alone. You just wanted to be by yourself. However, that night, unexpectedly, Tan returned and asked, why did you say some of your parents are back already? Why are you lying to me? So the two of you argued. After arguing too much, Tan got upset and went back to sleep at his sibling's house. So that night, you ended up sleeping alone, and you had a very strange dream. That night, while you were sleeping in your dream, you saw a man standing in the middle of your dormitory. He asked your landlord about a lady named Twee in room number 3. The landlord replied that Twee had been in room 3 for a few days. So how could he see her? After hearing that conversation, you jolted awake. You woke up to go to work the next night, not remembering or paying attention to it anymore until when you were sitting at work, leisurely, and you thought about that dream. You wondered who Twee was. The next day, Tan also came back, and the two of you slept together again. The same day, you went to the Shuyana Hospital to visit your grandmother. On that day, you asked for a day off from work because you felt too tired. You probably had a fever, so you sincerely told Tan, today you should work, I'll stay home because I feel too tired. After Tan left for work, you took the chance to sleep, and you slept until noon. You were really tired. When you woke up, you showered and prepared some food. But that day you cooked a meal and set it up saying, if she appears here, please don't disturb us because we're just workers here. We don't mean any harm. so please don't come to disturb us anymore. Then you had your meal until about 3 p.m. when you decided to take an afternoon nap. You were suddenly pinned down by a woman in white, and she sat on your stomach. You couldn't escape at all. You felt so stiff. You urgently thought of a guy who usually sat outside your room smoking at that hour, so you tried to shout really loudly for him to hear you. Once you shouted, the woman released you, and you quickly ran out of your room to grab your phone to call for help, because at that moment, you were truly scared. You waited a few days after Ty returned from work, and the three of you decided to move to another rental room, no longer staying in that one. After you three moved out of that room, you and Ty stayed together while Ton moved in with his siblings because he had changed companies to work for. However, you realized that since you moved out of that room, your body had been showing very strange symptoms. You felt as if you could foresee events that would happen the next day, as if you somehow knew what would happen. Especially, you felt like you could let people into your body to communicate. A few weeks later, you happened to walk past that road again. In a grocery store, after doing some shopping, the store owner mentioned room number 3 in your boarding house. That room used to be inhabited by a couple. On that day, they went to the local market to sell seafood. However, the wife was pregnant, and her husband was on a motorcycle when they were hit by a car, causing the wife to lose the baby and the husband to break his leg. At this point, you don't know who Twee is or who that couple was, and whether they had died or not is still unclear to you. You felt very confused and still wondered if Twee was following you. After some time working in Long, and suddenly during the first wave of the pandemic around April 2020, your mother told you to go back to your hometown to work because she couldn't settle down with you working there. So you returned to your hometown and worked for a company. After a few months, you were promoted to a managerial position, and at that time, you reconnected with a girl you had previously broken up with, who you had known since high school. After both of you got back together, you had a business trip to Chowlan, which was right by your girlfriend's house. That day, you went to your girlfriend's house to sleep over, but although you were in a relationship, you respected her and slept on the floor while she slept on the loft. You worked until about midnight, too tired to continue. That night, after you fell asleep, you felt as if a child was walking back and forth above your head, playing and laughing, tickling your ears. Although you realized you were being followed by a spirit, you were too tired to care and kept sleeping. The next morning, as you went to work, you noticed that the area was mostly filled with students. So you guessed that this might be the spirit of a fetus of some student. Over time, you also became the owner of a distribution company, and your parents provided you with some capital to do business. You mentioned that during that period, your business was thriving and you were gaining a lot. You worked hard, hoping to become a very young boss. Your business was growing like a kite caught in the wind. However, looking back later, you wondered why. Every time you went out with clients, you wanted to go to karaoke bars. Although still very young, you simultaneously managed 3 companies, and each time you met clients, you frequented those karaoke bars instead of regular drinking establishments. You didn't simply go to drink. You spent a lot of money there, predominantly to drink and waste money, without involving women or illicit activities, because you knew those girls interacted with many men. Later, when you look back, you realized you had spent about $300 million on these karaoke bars for very unnecessary things. At the peak of your career, your monthly income never dropped below $80 million. Suddenly, the pandemic hit hard, and after implementing Directive 15, you could not sell any goods due to storage costs piling up, reaching tens of millions within just 12 weeks. At this point, you couldn't hold on any longer, so you contacted your distributor to return the goods. You called the company to liquidate all your products. They promised to pay you back 4 days later, but when that time came, you called again, only to find out the company had gone bankrupt. As a result, you suffered a total loss of about $1.4 billion. This marked your first major failure at age 19, leading you into debt, and you left your homeland. By the Lunar New Year of 2021, your grandmother passed away, so you returned home to mourn her. During your time mourning, you contacted a fortune teller who was also involved in the first story related to the car accident. After asking the fortune teller, you found out that you had a female spirit following you. You weren't sure if this spirit held a grudge against you, but she wanted to follow you to harm you until you die. Realizing this, your father worried that you might end up in a dire situation and could resort to suicide. Hence, he told you to go home and settle your debts, while he asked, "How much do you owe? Just go home. Let's take care of it." When you met the fortune teller, she gave you strings to wear on your wrists, ankles, and waist. You said that when you wore them, they felt okay, but once you got home, you heard a voice telling you to take them off because they wouldn't stop her. Sometimes, while you were napping on the hammock, you'd feel her push you down, and when you slept in your room, you often saw her shadow at the foot of your bed. Many nights, you frequently spotted this shadow standing outside your room. Moreover, since you had a statue of Mother Mary in water placed in your room, this spirit couldn't enter. Thus, you endured until the next day when your family invited that fortune teller over to uncover why the spirit could sometimes enter your room and sometimes could not. She performed some rituals to ward off the spirit, ensuring it wouldn't step foot in your house. After sitting there for a while, you noticed that the fortune teller seemed to be possessed and instructed you to perform the same ritual. Your story about the ghost high now has you stuffed into it. Your dress has just said yes. But you, Twee, have to enter my body so that I just need what you tell me. At this moment, you are sitting cross-legged, similar to meditating. You are waiting for that flower to enter your language, because after the day you left that boarding room, you have already been able to let others enter you. You are sitting cross-legged there, your eyes closed, and you feel like someone is using both hands to strongly shake your shoulders. However, you forget one thing, that you are currently wearing a rosary made of marble around your neck. So, she says you have to take that string off for it to enter. At the time you're still wearing it, you can still feel it, but until you take that string off, you completely lose control of yourself. People said that at the moment you were possessed, you just closed your eyes and talked. The master asked what, and you only wrote it down in the notebook. You didn't speak afterwards. Then the master asked why your body followed them for so long. The flower replied, "Because it went into my house and wanted to take down my altar. It said some rude things, and the master had to beg for a whole day to let you go. However, this spirit requested your house to build a temple for her, and this temple had to be orange, and the roof had to be painted green, built right at Tachao Mountain in Hatian." After saying these requests, Twee started to emerge, and your family quickly went to Hatian to build her a temple. That day, your whole family also prepared many things like lipstick, paper money, gold and silver, and all these supplies to burn for her. And opposite that water stall, there is also a karaoke bar. After your family completed Twee's requests, she returned and said that she would protect you. And then your work has been very smooth since then, because you're also the director of a labor export company. That is all the stories that have happened to you from childhood to adulthood. Coming up, there are still many stories that will continue to be shared in the next episodes. But for now, our story ends here. How do you feel about the story? Hello, greetings to everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel of Uncle Bod Dewey's Ghost Stories. I wish everyone an engaging ghost story listening session. Thank you all very much. Today's story comes from a friend who is a mixed Vietnamese-Japanese. The stories he will share with us today are fragmented tales related to a house he used to live in Bao Loc, Lam Dong. Briefly talking about him, his father is Japanese and his mother is Vietnamese, so he is mixed Vietnamese-Japanese. Currently, he is a student at university in Ho Chi Minh City. He shares that back in 2001, at that time, his father was determined to retake the university entrance exam. So he left Bao Loc, Lam Dong to go to Saigon to take the exam. During that time, he and his mother lived at home in Bao Loc, Lam Dong until 2005. At that time, while his father was preparing for the exam, he would often return to Bao Loc to visit home a few times. And each time his father returned, he would frequently experience ghostly encounters. He remembers one time when his father came back after taking a bus in the late afternoon from the city to Bao Loc, arriving home very late at night. That day, it was raining heavily and the wind was fierce. Their house at that time was not well off, so the heavy rain poured down on the tin roof, making a loud noise, making it hard to sleep. He remembers clearly that night when his father came home very late. It was late, and almost everyone was asleep. Plus, after being out in the rain, his father was soaking wet, so he hurried inside to grab a towel to dry off. After cleaning himself up, his father came out, used a hairdryer to dry his hair, and went straight into the bedroom to sleep since it had been such a long day. At that time, he was also asleep, but after about 2 to 3 hours, he heard sounds next to his bedroom wall, resembling a tiger roaring. However, in his area, there were no tigers. He could hear the noise, but thought it was just something startling and unusual since he was the only one hearing it. The roar was extremely loud, which startled him awake. He sat up and looked out into his room. He saw a man in black standing outside his room door. He could only see the head, which was bald, and the rest of his body was dark. However, the man was completely still, which scared him a lot, but he didn't understand why his throat felt tight and he could not speak. After seeing that, he lay back down to try to sleep again. After a moment, he saw his father sitting up and wiping his head as the rainwater from the tin roof dripped on him, making his hair wet. That is why his father sat up to dry his hair. While his father was drying his hair, he clearly saw the bald man sitting beside his father, lightly tapping his father's shoulder a few times. His father, however, showed no reaction at all. After that, they all went back to sleep, but the next morning his father woke up and said to him, "I don't know why last night I must have slept in the wrong position because I woke up feeling like my head was twisted awkwardly." After that, he asked his father jokingly if he had seen that man. His father seemed to change the subject and talk about something else. He didn't know what his father dealt with afterwards, until the second time he was haunted in that house by the same man. It was a summer day when his parents seemed to be out, so he asked his grandmother to stay home to take care of him. That night, only the two of them stayed together in the living room, sleeping on a spring mattress. His feet were sticking out of the mattress toward the door because the weather in Bow Lock was really cold around 2 a.m., around 10 degrees Celsius. It was extremely cold. He was sleeping soundly, but because his feet were sticking out, the cold wind came in and made his feet very cold. So he woke up startled. He opened his eyes and looked around. In the direction where his feet were directed was his parents' room. He noticed something strange. He heard footsteps. The ghost story about Ms. High in these streets keeps creeping along. If you look closely, you see that the man they read a little about is the bald man who stands listening in front of your parents' room, just like last time. He doesn't make any movements at all. He just stands still right there and does nothing. To be honest, when the grandmother said that you were very scared, but being young, you didn't know what to do. You didn't know how to chant Buddha's name already, but the more you chanted, the more scared you got. And you kept staring at that man who just stood there for who knows how long until you fell asleep without realizing it. Until the next morning, everything was normal, except for one thing. A flashlight in your parents' room was missing. How do you know for sure that the flashlight is missing? Because the night before bed, you and your grandmother had gone into that room to grab the flashlight to take outside to lock the chicken coop. Then your grandmother returned the flashlight to its place, ensuring that all the doors had been locked. So there was no way that flashlight could have been taken by someone. Until now, you still wonder if that person took the flashlight for some reason or if it was just a coincidence. And you have no idea if the flashlight had anything to do with this incident. By the third time you encountered it, you were stuffed for 3 consecutive nights. That day was a summer day when the two of you were sleeping in the living room, lying in the same spot as before. While you were sleeping, you suddenly startled and looked straight at the place where you sit at your desk every day. You saw a woman, an elderly lady, sitting quietly at the desk. She kept staring intently at the table where your stuff is, sitting still and not doing anything. At that moment, your mother also startled, but you thought maybe your mother didn't see that lady or something because she didn't react at all. When your mother startled, she saw you wake up, so she asked if you needed to go to the toilet. You said no, and then your mother went back to sleep. Only you kept looking at that woman who was still sitting at the desk near your bedroom window. You didn't understand why you didn't ask your mother if she saw that woman. You were just silent, merely observing her. You thought that while lying down, you kept looking outside like that. And then a moment later, you saw that lady holding a bunch of plates, throwing them directly onto your family's altar because you were sleeping in front of the house. So near you there was also an altar. You witnessed her holding the items and striking them right onto your altar. You saw what she was holding. She threw it onto the altar. These objects emitted a faint yellow light, somewhat like the glow of fireflies. You were fixated on watching her, unaware if you were scared. While lying down, you were continuously looking. After a while, that woman disappeared, and then you slept until the next morning. When your mother was sweeping the house, you asked her if she saw anything while cleaning around the altar, and she said she didn't see anything. Until the second night. That night your whole family went to the living room to sleep, and miraculously, like the previous night, only you startled again in the middle of the night. You saw that woman again, still in the same spot sitting next to your desk at your window. This time, the window was open, and there were iron frames. You observed this woman. She held something and knocked exactly 5 times on these iron bars. After that, you forgot what else she did because a long time has passed. Until the next morning, you sat back at that place to study, and you noticed that the altar was chipped away from the paint. By the third night, it was just like that again, but this time, when you're startled at a specific time, you saw that the woman was no longer sitting at your desk. Instead, she was sitting in front of her bathroom door, right in front of it. Because you had seen her many times already, you were somewhat less scared. You didn't know why. Perhaps your bravery had increased to the point that when you saw that woman, you just fell asleep without reacting at all. You slept until morning, and concerning the events after that, you know nothing. After those 3 times you met this woman in your house, later on, your parents moved to D-Lynn for work, so your family no longer lived in Bowlock. At the time when your parents moved to D-Lynn, they were also building a house, but at this time, your parents only intended to build half of the house, meaning they would just build the ground floor and a staircase, intending to add another floor later when they had the conditions. At that time, your parents placed a large mirror in your room, facing your bed. You didn't understand why, but during this time, you were busy with many matters and kept falling sick, running a high fever, like as high as 41 degrees Celsius. Overall, during this period, you were very weak. After being in that condition for a while, your aunt went to consult a master to continue renovating the house. But the master didn't allow the aunts and siblings to check it. However, your aunt and your family decided to continue renovating the house. So after about 2 to 3 weeks of renovations, your uncle, your aunt's husband, had a stroke and passed away the day after your uncle's funeral. Since that night, every night when you slept, you heard noises from the kitchen like someone was scraping their fingernails. Every night, you heard it, and during those times, you thought you were just hearing things, so you tried to sleep. Until the 49th day since your uncle's death, there was a nun who came to your house and told you and your family not to let you sleep in that place, the place near the kitchen. She didn't want you to sleep there because if you did, you would fall sick, suggesting you go to sleep in the living room instead. After you moved to the living room, everything reverted to normal until one day when your mother got pregnant and gave birth to a baby brother. That was also during your rebellious phase. Since you were in your teenage years, you started smoking and going out here and there, making your mother very worried. After your mother gave birth, when the baby came home, it was discovered that he had jaundice. The family then took him to the hospital. When the family took the baby to the hospital, the doctors said the jaundice was just physiological and not dangerous. Then they brought the baby home. But day by day, his condition worsened. His skin turned more yellow, and his belly was swollen. At this time, the family was scared, so they took him to the central hospital in the city of Bowlock. There, the doctors examined him and said this child is very sick and needs to be taken straight to the children's hospital in Ho Chi Minh City. When they brought the child to the hospital, the doctors found out that the child was born without a gallbladder, so they now had to proceed with surgery. However, at that time, the child's mother was quite worried about her child, so she hesitated about the surgery because she was afraid the child was too small and too weak. The operation could easily lead to death, so in the end, she was scared to let anyone operate on her. Thus, the parents decided to go directly to Hanoi to find a healer there who would give the child traditional herbal medicine to take. However, at this time, The child was still too small to take medicine. The healer still instructed that the child should not drink milk, but only take the medicine and drink rice water. After taking this medicine, the healer warned that the child would have black stools now. If, after some time, the child passed yellow stool, it meant that the child was almost recovered. During this time, the family persistently gave the child herbal medicine, and about 2 months later, the child started to have yellow stools. The family was very happy and prepared to order a new batch of medicine from Hanoi. However, then the child's belly began to exhibit abnormal symptoms, and they hurriedly took the child to a hospital in Dalat for examination. The doctors diagnosed the child as having free fluid in the abdomen, and now they had to operate, or else it could lead to infection. That afternoon, when the child returned home from school, they saw many people gathered at their house, all worried about their little brother. The child's father told the mother that now we should take care of our child, and at that moment, the child didn't understand anything, just saw that the younger brother was suffering so much that the mother had to bring milk for him. The parents quickly took the child to Dalat for medical examination, and that night, the child was so tired that they slept through to the morning. The next morning, the child woke up and saw that everyone had gone to the hospital in Dalat with their younger brother, leaving only the child alone at home. Since staying alone made the child very scared, they took their mother's rosary beads and played games until 4 a.m. Then, feeling hungry, the child went to the kitchen to cook, but while cooking, the rosary got caught on a wall and fell, scattering the beads everywhere. The child picked them up, but it wasn't enough to gather all the beads, and just the next morning, after the child had cleaned up the mess, everyone returned home with the younger brother, and they all learned that he had not survived. After the funeral for the little brother, the parents and family sat together to think and reconnect with the story of the roses and the ghosts they had encountered in their old houses as well as in their current home. Because the child's family was very confused about why in their home, their little brother saw many spirits, and why their newborn baby was also sick and passed away. They weren't sure if it was because they were struggling or if the family possessed some supernatural instability, leading them to finally decide to seek help. After a while, their parents found a healer from the ethnic minority group, but the child did not know where their parents found this healer. But on that day, the child distinctly saw their parents carrying 3 chickens home, and they slaughtered these chickens, pouring the blood into 3 bowls. After a while, the healer came, took the 3 bowls, and chanted an incantation in the language of the ethnic Chu-Ru people from the Central Highlands. After finishing the incantation, the child clearly saw the words appearing in the 3 bowls of chicken blood as they stared at it. Then, after a moment, the healer explained to the parents why the child often saw ghosts in their house, stating that their old house was built on 2 graves of a couple. However, only the upper half of the graves was under the child's house, while the lower halves were buried in a different plot of land. Currently, the land on which the child's family lives used to be the habitat of a very fierce tiger that hunted many humans in this dense forest area. The roar of this tiger was often heard, and moreover, the child's family faced another problem. When they moved into this house, the builder had secretly buried a cow in the child's house so that there would be a death in the child's family. However, due to the family's great-grandparents' protection, the baby brother was born and had died, creating a long process for the healer to lift the curse for them that lasted for 3 to 4 hours, in which the child witnessed the process as well. Then the child noticed that the healer used 2 of their teeth to remove the bones of the buried cow, which were rotten. Regarding the issue of the laborers who built this house, the healer also addressed the matter by using their teeth to remove the nails inside the beams of the house, revealing the bones of the workers who had been buried there. If the child spoke about this in a different way, it was certain that this beam had to be made of wood. It couldn't be made of cement. The spirits were not entirely malevolent, nor were the laborers' spirits resentful, as sometimes it was the rules within their profession that led them to perform such actions. After this, the healer instructed the family to take the 2 bones and the nails outside to a ditch and not to look back. 2 days later, they were to go to a shrine in Phan Rang, Ninh Thuan Province, to perform a ceremony with a goat. Next, The healer absolutely forbade the family from eating dog meat or snakehead fish. He also prayed for the family to have a baby girl, but up to now, the child's parents still have not had a daughter. Thanks to that curse-lifting ceremony, the child's family managed to clarify many of the mysteries that have been troubling them for a long time regarding the strange occurrences in their family. The next story was recounted by a female friend from Tianjin, who said that her mother suddenly fell victim to witchcraft without knowing it. However, the mother only learned this inadvertently one time when the two were out to eat at a spicy noodle shop. This incident occurred in 2021. On that day, mother and daughter unexpectedly went to eat at a noodle shop that was also a familiar place near their home. When they were almost done with the 2 bowls of noodles, the mother discovered something suspicious. There is a lady who used to have a very unfortunate coincidence. This lady is actually an acquaintance of the restaurant owners. So it was by chance that the 2 sisters met again and sat there talking to each other. This lady's name is Ms. Hong, and she and MS. Hong have had quite a long time talking to each other before, because this ghostly lady has the ability to tell fortunes. A long time ago, Ms. Hong often talked to her. MS. Hong would also often show her the days she would hit the lottery so that her friends could come and buy lottery tickets, but her friends always won the small lotteries worth a few million. However, after a period of time, the friends lost contact with Ms. Hong completely. Today, they met at this spicy noodle shop. After talking for a while, the mother started asking MS. Hong about her fortune-telling, to see if in the coming time she would encounter any problems or anything good or bad. However, Ms. Hong said that she would be hit by 2 women, and she knew exactly who those 2 were. Hearing that, the mother was very scared because she did not know who hated her, as she hadn't done anything wrong to anyone. The ghost only mentioned that, but did not specify who they were or what kind of curse it was. Only when the mother got home, she contacted a lady, also about 50 or 60 years old, named Ms. Cuc, who often visited her house. Ms. Cuc could also tell fortunes, but she hadn't been accurate for the last 12 years or so. The mother then remembered Ms. Cuc and called her, explaining that this morning she and her son went to eat noodles and met a lady claiming to be hit by some girl. The mother did not dare to mention that she had consulted another fortune teller, fearing that Ms. Cuc would wonder why she didn't consult her first. So the mother gently explained, "This morning my son and I had noodles, and a woman said I was going to be hit by a girl. I don't know if that's true or not. Can you check for me?" At that point, Ms. Cuc replied, "No, it's not true. I can see you. You're fine, don't worry." The mother believed Ms. Cuc because, after all, she often came to visit, and she didn't feel that what that lady in the noodle shop said was that important, so she gradually forgot about it. Until a short period later, the mother started feeling severe headaches and stomach aches. It was a strange pain, her stomach hurt a lot, and she felt feverish continuously. At first, she thought she was just sick and it would go away in time. Gradually, about 12 weeks later, she started to see her vision blurred, as if she were viewing at night during the day. Her eyes became cloudy. One time while chopping chicken during the day, she suddenly couldn't see and accidentally cut her hand. Until the day when Directive 16 ended, which was around November 10th, 2021, when her son took her out to deliver something. This delivery place was also close to another fortune teller, but when they got there, the person scheduled to receive the delivery said they would come out in half an hour because they were busy. So the mother and son had some free time. The mother, in pain, said to her son, "Let's see if that fortune teller knows anything." When they arrived at the fortune teller's house, the fortune teller said, "Your mother has been cursed for over a year now." This matched what the ghostly Ms. Hong had said to the mother the day before. The fortune teller next to the delivery place said that for the last year, the mother had been targeted by 2 people who were supposedly cursing her. One of them had a charm that didn't work, but the other had a very strong one that affected the mother, causing her to gradually weaken until she would, in the end, die. However, the mother was devoted to seeking the Buddha's protection and generally lived a good life, which made the spell not too harmful. Then the fortune teller added that this spell was currently manifesting a mark on her forehead, and it was progressing upwards toward her eyes. If more time passed, it would definitely lead to her death. After that, the fortune teller instructed the mother to take garlic wine from her house, and before the mother left, the fortune teller gave her a chant to recite while making the garlic wine. The bottle of garlic wine had to be divided into 4 small parts and placed at the corners of the house, along with continuously rolling chicken eggs over her body, ensuring it was boiled, not raw. This way, when she got home, just as instructed, she boiled the eggs and rolled them over her body. Just as the fortune teller had instructed, when the mother broke the egg, the shell resembled a skull. Additionally, in the skull there were 2 black dot shapes that looked like eyes. The next day, the pattern remained, but the black dot shapes changed to resemble holes, as if something had pierced through. On the 3rd day, when the mother cracked the egg, there were letters inside that interestingly matched the initials of her name. After breaking through the egg white into the yolk, there were many dark dots clustered together. At this point, sensing that something was wrong, the son remembered a fortune teller in Fu Keep who allegedly had a good way to treat curses and came up with a plan. The ghost story of Mrs. High taking her mother up to rescue in search of the house of this master. But the master's house was too far away and difficult to reach. So the process of finding the master's house took about an hour until 11 a.m. By the time they arrived, it was already evening and the master did not accept to help. He said he only performed spells early in the morning. When they arrived, it was too late and there was nothing to do. So now I'll try to go back to the neighborhood early tomorrow and make the most of it. Don't let it pass already. It's not good. So the 2 of them headed back in the evening. That night, your mother finished the garlic place at Ms. Mai's house as usual, but this year when your mother sent it, the smell of garlic wine started to make your mother feel sick and her eyes darken, while in the previous houses the smell of garlic was very normal. Today, your mother threw up a bit, which reminded her, and the color looked exactly like what people described, but after your mother threw everything up, she seemed a bit better. However, at that time, your mother was stubborn and didn't want to go to Ms. Nam's house, the master in Fu Kui, who is quite similar to a demon, preventing her from going. Your mother insisted on not going to Mr. Nam's house, so you said, "All right, now go to sleep. Early tomorrow morning, we'll leave." Your mother went into her room and collapsed. The next morning, at 6 a.m., she went, and by 7 a.m., they were at the teacher's house. Since it was early in the morning, the master accepted to help your mother, and she entered the master's house. At this point, you said the master's healing method was very different from other masters. Perhaps he had a unique method of healing. For example, Mr. Nam took out a small wooden board with the thickness being quite considerable. On the surface of the board, the master had already nailed down some nails for decoration, not pushed down too hard, just enough to keep them stable on the board. He then brought out a patch of cloth with these nails and started to recite incantations while hitting the nails back into the patch. He asked your mother where she was currently, to describe her condition. While presenting, the master read the incantation and pushed in the nails to the patch. After he finished nailing all these nails into the patch, he gave your mother a paper package. This package contained many small papers, and he wrapped these small papers in a larger sheet of paper for her to take home and burn the next day while eating. After that, Mr. Nam said, "Don't worry, I've taken care of everything for her. It's not a crime, but this is a natural law, and now I'm returning it to her. She must accept it." Your mother then said since she went to Mr. Nam's house, her eyes had brightened up just like someone who just had cataract surgery. Initially, her vision was blurry, with dark spots like someone was covering her eyes. Since she could see Mr. Nam's clearly now, her eyesight had brightened up entirely. However, that day, each night she felt chills followed by warmth, and she saw that this feeling was emanating from her body, rising directly to the top of her head. However, each time this happened, she heard a sound in her head. She then said since she started combining that herbal medicine with Ms. Mai's garlic wine, she felt significantly better. She no longer saw the dark spots. Her body also felt more vibrant instead of gloomy. However, At this moment, after having the garlic wine, she still felt nauseous. In the next few days, she rolled eggs but didn't notice anything unusual. However, just a day later, when she took an egg and rolled it on her mother, she revealed a skull image. This skull image, which appeared on her forehead, had a lot of small writings like someone was sketching a model of your mother's head. Just as Ms. Mai had predicted, it had written on your mother's forehead. Until the following day, she continued to roll, and this time it revealed the whole pig's head. Reflecting back, her mother was born in the year of the pig. These eggs, although boiled and cooked already, seemed to signify something related to their sentiments. Every time before rolling the eggs, she would also mix these eggs with garlic wine, and as a result, the garlic wine was always murky. Up to now, your mother's condition has improved significantly. Regarding Ms. Cuc, the friend of your mother who had previously called the witch to inquire, she said there was nothing wrong with your mother. But after this incident, Ms. Cuc lost contact and blocked your mother's phone number, making it unable for her mother to call. Your mother said if she had listened to her and not done anything, maybe now your mother would be dead. After recovering, your mother also figured out who the two people were that harmed her but did not know how she found out. The master mentioned where your mother would reflect on her life and think deeply about anyone she had conflicts with. Your mother ended up realizing who those two were. She observed them and noticed any signs. Your mother now knows that they have returned everything to her, and especially from that day, whenever she saw their faces. She always noticed that they had dark circles under their eyes, making them appear shadowy. And currently, you and your mother only know that those two's faces seem very dull and dark without brightness. As for what happens next to them, you're no longer clear. The ghost story of Aunt Hai ended up being lost at sea after the storm passed. The whole family and relatives went there to look for Uncle Oot's body, but during that search, they discovered a corpse because at that time, there was a woman who identified herself as the mother of Uncle Oot, saying he was her son, not a relative from your side. So at that moment, when the deceased could no longer identify who was who, this woman claimed it was a case of mistaken identity. Both sides argued with each other, but in the end, your family identified the correct body of Uncle Oot, and that woman also found the body of her child. Afterwards, your family took Uncle Oot's body home for burial. However, after conducting the funeral for Uncle Oot, several times he possessed the body there and came back to warn about things that would happen. Generally, it happened many times, but you only recount the most striking incident. The story that day was like this. That year you were only 13 years old. It was also the 28th day of Tet, and the whole family was gathered together talking and playing with each other. While sitting and talking, suddenly your mother seemed to be possessed by someone, cry a lot. Seeing this, the family knew that your mother was possessed by Uncle Oot, so they asked if it was his spirit. At that time, your mother answered, "It's me," but she was crying a lot, saying hard to get the words out. At that moment, your mother's body said something like this: "If during Tet you don't want to replace laughter with tears, then don't let him go outside." Just as she finished saying that, your mother cried a lot, while speaking with a trembling voice. Then everyone asked, "Who are you talking about?" And at that moment, your mother suddenly looked toward your 9th younger brother, and you were alarmed because that boy was standing right behind you, and you thought he was you. Then you realized that and went to another place while your mother was still crying. This means that the person Uncle Oot wanted to refer to was indeed him, not you, meaning Uncle wanted to prevent this child from going out because he might have an accident or something. However, your family asked why he was not allowed to go out. At that moment, Uncle said, if he goes outside, he will be hit and killed by a car because there are many children around and they will collide with him and cause serious harm. This made your family very worried because every time Uncle possessed someone, he warned clearly. Therefore, during the Tet days, to be cautious, your family didn't let him go outside. As a result, throughout the preparations for Tet, you just remained indoors playing with that younger brother without going outside. On New Year's Eve, you didn't sleep early either. You were playing with those kids when you saw your mother carrying a wine cup and 2 candles. She placed the candles on the altar for New Year's Eve offerings. Your mother then took a candle outside while holding the wine cup, drank from it, and spoke in a stuttering manner. When everyone in the house heard your mother utter such phrases, they were outside. Therefore, surely everyone knew your mother was possessed by the spirit that followed her, assisting her. When these flowers were meant to deter the restless spirits of children. Following Uncle's words. As mentioned earlier, your mother was often possessed by various spirits. This was because your mother was known for her spiritual abilities, making it easy for spirits to enter her. Even during that night, a deity possessed your mother, and he used objects to beat in front of the house to scare away those spirits. But then, your ninth younger brother had an accident. No one could prevent it from happening. He suffered an injury that severely impacted his skull. No one knows how it happened, but currently, his skull is damaged, and an entire quarter is missing. Now, if you touch that area, it's soft because there's no brain. Regarding your mother, she often told that deity who possessed her, saying, "Why don't you go do your duty and save others instead of just lingering here?" But the deity did not interfere with your mother anymore. And by this point, we have concluded today's story. Before ending the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel to help Duway. If you find this story interesting, please comment below so others can read about it too. Now, let's wait for more exciting episodes ahead. Goodbye, everyone.